all being focused in this workshop on affecting the state legislature. A lot of these principles, ideas, can be applied to the county supervisors or can be applied to Congress. The processes are a little different. Congress they can do simultaneous bills in both houses, for example, versus here, bills go in series versus parallel. So I'm talking about the legislative process. I'm going to briefly go through reading a bill and taking one of these and demystifying it. What does this mean? So if you're going to go down to Capitol and get a copy of a bill, or someone hand you one that you could, hopefully make a little more sense of it. And then I want to talk about kind of like a political background. What are really the political realities in terms of how our decisions are made? And this will relate a little bit to what Don had to say this morning. Then I want to talk about grassroots lobbying. And that will include kind of an overview of different methods of supporting legislation. It will include how to write an effective letter, kind of like how to write an effective press release. I'll talk about how to make a personal visit, and a letter writing or citizen lobbying campaign. I'll go through the elements of that and what it would take to kind of plan that. And then I'll talk about a real important instrument in grassroots lobbying is how to form coalitions or how to really organize other organizations to support the same cause that you're working on. So talking about the legislative process, I'm going to try and be kind of brief, but at the same time, if you have questions, I gave this part of this workshop about a year ago, but I haven't done it in a while, so if it doesn't seem clear, do ask questions. In the legislature, in our legislature, in California, and there's all kinds of variations in other capitals, etc. A bill goes. There's three main processes are for it. The bill, when a legislator introduces a bill, he has a bill. It goes first to what's called a rules committee. And that committee decides on what policy committee is going to hear that bill. Then it goes to the policy committee. And then it goes to what's called the fiscal committee. It looks at how much the bill is going to cost us. Like maybe Ways and Means or Senate Finance, that would be fiscal committee. And then it goes to the floor of the House to get voted on by the full House. Okay, so just say that. I'll just say floor. And in the state legislature, it goes through this process. Say if an assembly member introduces a bill, then it starts in the assembly, and it just goes through this process, and then it goes to the Senate. So you might have a Senate bill will end up in the assembly, but it will get there second. We'll go through the assembly first. The same thing can happen if a senator introduces a bill. It starts in a Senate side, goes through that first, and then it goes to the assembly side. But it does the identical process in both houses. The difference in Congress, for information, is that usually a bill, you get a representative and a senator to introduce bills simultaneously, and they start through both houses at the same time, and they come through and then they merge them in a conference committee. So that way you don't have to wait till it finishes one whole house and then start it through the other house. So it's a little bit different process. The most key thing in getting bills passed is these committees. This is really where you're going to lose or pass the bill. For most bills, except for a few exceptions, if the floor is going to do what these committees agreed upon. Because the floor, they don't read the bills. For the most part, the legislators don't have time to read the bills. What they're going to do if a bill comes, say an ag bill comes to the floor, they're going to, a Democrat's going to get up and look at an ag Democrat and see how he votes, and then he's going to vote. He goes, I know so-and-so, I agree with this philosophy. He sat on the ag committee that actually heard in detail what this bill did. So 5 or 6 senators in there will make the actual vote, the rest will be voting according to how they vote. I'm simplifying things a little bit, but that's basically how things work. That's probably the number one thing that influences votes on the floor, is that a handful of legislators who know anything about that bill will set a vote, and then the rest will follow. They'll see, my Republican buddy voted the opposite, so I'm going to vote no, etc. So these committees are very crucial. In each committee, you have what's called a committee chair. And in a committee, the entire staff of that committee serves that chairperson. So if you have a Senator Presley, he's a senator who's chair of, was last year, he's not now. But he's a senator of Natural Resources and Wildlife. That's the committee I work for. I worked for him. So in addition to doing all the committee business also, I actually did personal business for him. Like I would also get involved in pushing bills for him, of his own bills. But as committee staff, it is their goal to analyze, do actually the bill analysis of each bill that comes through this committee. And so the committee staff is real important because they can, they gotta report the truth, but at the same time, like you can report any truth, you can slant it whatever way you want. So if the committee staff likes your bill, they can write this glowing thing and just omit the stuff that makes it look bad in the analysis. And the analyses are 2 pages, 3 pages. And the analysis is when the senators come to a hearing, they sit down, that's about the only thing they look at in terms of that's on paper to decide how they're going to vote. But actually the biggest thing that affects their vote is what the lobbyists are doing and telling. They bring in their own little analysis. So these are the key points. The reason I bring that up is when I get into how do we affect change or how we get our position, how we affect or support or oppose legislation. These are the really key places we focus. In the state of California, the Assembly side, the Rules Committee is very significant, and the Senate side is not so significant. It has to do with in the Assembly, rules is run by Willie Brown, who has an extraordinary amount of power by the way he has structured power in the Assembly. And in the Senate, it's not so much so. Also, the Senate's much more formal and traditional. In the Senate Assembly, it's loose. People don't wear ties on the floor, and they'll say "fuck you" on the floor and things like that. So it's a little, and then you would never hear that on the other side. But on this side, in rules, you may have a bill that's clearly an agricultural bill. It clearly should go to Assembly Agriculture Committee. Yet because of the politics, they'll say, well, we know if this bill ends up in the Ag Committee, it's going to die in that committee. So what they'll do is if you have the votes on the Rules Committee, you can say, well, let's put it in the Health and Welfare Committee, or Health and Safety Committee. Because we know Diane Watson's a liberal from LA, and her committee, she'll pass this thing right out. So that's an important decision, and sometimes this is the Rules Committee. So when you start looking at legislation, there's a few key places you're going to find immediately. Say you heard about a bill, quickly finding information. One is the bill has gone through a committee already, not the county rules, but it's gone through a policy or a fiscal committee. There's been an analysis done, a staff analysis. So if you know it's been in the legislature a while, you know it passed Senate Natural Resources Committee, call that committee and ask them for a copy of the analysis. The analyses usually aren't ready until the day of the hearing and the bill gets heard the first time in committee. If it's gone through a couple committees, call and ask for both analyses. Call this committee, then call the Senate Finance Committee or whatever and get it. I should add one other thing. Some bills that don't have any fiscal impact can go straight up to the floor from here, but I'm not going to talk about it. Generally, most bills end up in the fiscal committee. So these are the places that the bills do or die, right here. And really the real pit for bills is in the fiscal committee. And the legislature, this is like, usually the fiscal committee is on an average much more conservative than the policy committees. And that's where the, 90% of the bills that die. So what about the hearing? Before I move on, talk about the bill. This hearing here is usually not public.
Are the fiscal committees specialized, or is there one fiscal committee?
There's one fiscal committee. So you may have 15 policy committees, all these possibilities, but they all funnel into this committee. So you see how powerful that committee is. That's a good question. This guy, they have jurisdiction over just ag-related bills and the ones that come to them. Fiscal committee, they have jurisdiction over any bill that has money in it. And so, can you imagine if that's called a juice committee. In other words, the legislature juices when it's the lobbyists will give you megabucks for being on that committee. So a juice committee is the legislature is in a position to extract a lot of money from lobbyists. It does good fundraising. So if you're on fiscal committee, you throw a fundraiser, you can be sure even if they don't like you, Dow Chemical is going to show up and give you $500 bills. There was this kind of conservative, the Senate in California is very conservative, the president of the Senate, Roberti, was losing power. So there was like a break in the Democrats, and there was this conservative section of Democrats. So to appease those Democrats and maintain power as president of the Senate, he appointed one of the most conservative Democrats, he just seemed to be a Republican, to be the chair of this committee. So last year, any decent bill, even the ones that most Democrats liked, died in that committee. And because it came there, and Senator Boatwright was the person who was chairing it from Contra Costa County. He just ruled it with an iron fist, and he wouldn't even bring the bills up to be discussed if he didn't like them. Now, in our legislature, that used to happen, 10, 20 years ago. That was the way it was done. In Congress, that's the way it happens. That's the way Congress is run. The power here, they'll at least bring it up, and there is much more, a little bit more democratic or whatever. Other non-chair people have some impact. In Congress, it's like if you don't have the chairman's vote, forget it. I mean, it won't even come up for discussion. So it's different there. So the politics of the committee is important. So what I say about as far as the committees themselves, like we very often might want to testify. You consider, and I've said this before when I talk, is consider a hearing a staged event. It's not like, oh, we schedule this hearing, the public's going to come, we're going to take testimony, and then depending on what people say, we're going to make a decision. It's like everybody knows the hearings come. This process happens every year. All the work is done before the hearing. If you haven't done your work before the hearing, don't count on getting anything out of that hearing. Staging a hearing involves everything from, a bill's coming up and you're lobbying against it, and you're writing letters to whatever things you're doing. And there's some real embarrassing questions that can be asked. So you type up some sample questions and go to the 2 friends you have on that committee of 9, and you give them those sample questions. And so when Claire Berryhill, Director of Food and Ag, comes over to testify how pesticides are safe, you can ask someone to ask, well, you say they're safe, well, what is the extent of data gaps over in your department registration? And that's a question that it would be pretty embarrassing if you had to answer that in public. It's like 90%. So, you feed questions, and then in the meantime, you also should count votes. Most committees have an odd number of folks. So you say if there's a 7-member committee, that you need 5 votes. Excuse me, 4 votes. You need a majority to get a bill out of the committee. So you count, okay, you might have 2 votes we know we have for sure. 2 are in question, and 3 forget it. These guys, no way they're going to vote for this. So you know who you target. You got 2 for sure. So it's good to always let all of them know your position, but you're going to focus your effort on those 2 that are on the fence, just those 2 votes, and that's going to concentrate your lobby effort on those 2 votes. So you always want to do that. You always you identify what votes you have. How do you do that? You call the staff up, you ask them, you get the feedback. You ask them for a commitment. In other words, if they say, well, you can't commit, right, well, they're on the fence. And generally that's what you'll get out of most legislators. However, if you go, oh yeah, he's on your side, don't worry about it. Okay, you can count them out. And also talk to other people, legislators personally, what's going on. So I could go into a lot of detail about just the committee and all the things you can do around us in that committee. One is always find out on that staff who is the key person, who's doing the bill analysis of your bill before the hearing. And you want to go talk to that person. They're writing the bill analysis. Also, that consultant, they're called committee consultants, who's doing that bill analysis, can usually tell you who's come in from the opposition. Well, I've heard from 5 agrochemical industry lobbyists, this is what they're arguing, so you can get an idea what they're going to say to you in the committee hearing. So you can prepare your rebuttals and have them ready. And particularly if the guy can sense, don't ever assume it, but if you sense that this person who's the committee consultant is sympathetic to you, that doesn't mean he can get passed. You still got to go with the votes. He's not going to just say, Senator, this is a good bill, and they do it. Sometimes a lot of influence, but you still need to work to get the votes. If he can give you advice on how, he can say, well, you ought to target McCorkdale, or Senator McCorkdale, or who you shouldn't target, that kind of thing. And it can be helpful. So I want to talk just a minute. I'll stop there. And are there any questions about kind of this? Does this seem fairly clear?
Is it really as straightforward as being able to call them up and find these things out? Do you actually get to talk to the people you want to talk to? Is some person calling from Yolo County or something?
Yeah. Be persistent. Okay. understand a professional lobbyist is one of the rudest, most persistent people around. And so it's kind of hard to be too rude in the Capitol. No, that's not true, but it's kind of hard to be not too persistent. I mean, that's how lobbyists, you wouldn't believe how they get access to people. Well, you want to, when you call up, you usually want to get information initially. You ask who's handling this bill. If you're calling to say a senator is his own bill, you're calling his staff, the personal staff, not committee staff. You call up and say, well, you know, which of your aides is handling this bill? It's usually assigned to a particular aide. You want that person, you want to sit there and talk to the secretary. So you want to ask that for that person. You get their name and number, get on the phone with them. And most of them will say, well, I'll have to call you back, he's on the phone. Believe me, they will. And so you don't ever expect to get on your first phone call, just keep calling back. Yeah. And then if you have a chance, if you can, you know, a lot of people can't do this, but go down and find them, you know, look them up. They're used to having people walk in their office unannounced. I mean, that's lobbyists can in no way call people and make appointments. I mean, stuff's happening every minute, every day, and no one ever calls, they just go in and walk in. So, you know, you walk in the office and sit around, like so-and-so, you sit down, you wait 10 minutes, and you see them. So,
that's what seems so amazing about a lot of this work. I mean, you know, you really can just call a reporter up, call these people up. And at first that kind of fazed me, you know. So you have this easy, direct access. It's okay if you have access to these people. It's like the way things seem to get done is just calling people up and asking them, what do you think about this? Should I do this? Do you want to do this? You know?
you can't, and I'll get into when I talk about actually how you lobby a legislator, even getting access to a legislator, you probably think it's rude, you know, there's a senator, you gotta be real careful the way you get to him. It's not. It's just being persistent, kind of aggressive actually. I'm gonna go very briefly into looking at the bill before I go on. Take out the bill that you have. There's a couple of key things to keep in mind with the bill. At the top of the bill, you'll see, you may not see this, but it will say amended in the Assembly March 2nd, as it says in this one. It may not have anything there. If it doesn't have anything that says amended, it means that's the first copy of the bill. That was the introduced version. If it says amended, it means it's been changed once, sent back out to the printer, and came back. It means in one of these committees, they said, we like the bill, but you're going to have to amend it this way. So it goes from the committee, out to the printer, comes back, an amended version. Now you may look at a bill that's been in the legislature for a year, it might have 20 of these lines that say amended this date, amended this date, amended this date. You look at the top one, and that's the last amended version. So when you're working with a bill, you want to make sure you have the last amended version. I mean, it could be an entirely different subject. I mean, people take a bill, and they forgot to introduce some kind of bill on some subject that came from their constituent, and they'll gut it, and they'll put a whole other subject inside of it. That's possible. Generally, it's not considered kosher. I mean, theoretically, it's not considered kosher to change the whole subject, but anything's possible. They will change the whole subject sometimes. So, actually, you know, if you have two or three lines up here, so you know it's been amended like 2 or 3 times, it's really good to get all the previous versions. I mean, if there's 20 of them, forget. Just get the most recent one and maybe the 2 just prior to that. And you get those from the authors. And like this bill says introduced by Assemblyman Connolly and Hayden. Well, Hayden's a co-author. Connolly, the first name, is really the only author you should even think about. The only other thing, the rest tells you that Hayden also supports it. But in terms of what staff person is working it will be in Connolly's staff. So you would call there and you ask for the previous 2 versions. And the reason you look at that is because it gives you can look at the previous versions and you can see what's been going on with the bill politically. What kinds of changes have already been made? What kinds of compromises have already been made? And if you don't get it, sometimes it's very hard to even see what's been going on. And I'll tell you briefly just about these crossouts. If you add something to a bill, the immediate next new version will have italics. That's added since the last version. If you take something out, it will have a crossout, a line through it. And that is amended only since the last version. So if it's been amended twice, you will not see what changes were made on the very first version unless you have the first version. So what I'm just saying that is that you will not see the whole picture if there's been 3 amended versions and you only have the first copy. You'll see the changes that were made since the last one, but you won't see the change made previously. Only a couple other things. the way the bill's laid out is up front they have what's called a legislative digest. And the digest is basically, it's not the law, it's not even what they're proposing as law. It's just a summary by the attorney who drafted the bill of what he thinks the bill does. In other words, the legislature has what's called ledge counsel. I can draft a bill completely here in Davis on the computer and take it down there. Regardless, even if it's perfect, they're going to give it to their attorneys and they might just dot the I's or something, and then they do what's called a ledge counsel version. I can take a bill to the ledge counsel, like, people go, well, how do you write a bill? It could be everything from like 3 words written on a napkin at lunch saying, I want a bill that does this, to typed out formally just like this. Of course, the more formally you type it out, the less it is that the ledge counsel guy is going to screw it up when he does it. In other words, he's kind of, well, you want a bill that does this, well, how do you want to do it? There's a lot of ways you can do something. But if you have it complete, he'll take what you got, just make sure it's clean, and that'll come back out the same way in ledge counsel. So the first part, though, is just a summary, and it can be flawed. This guy's got 30 bills to type up this, in 2 days. He's going to crank out the context of the bill, and he's going to make a quick summary of what it does. And so I'd be cautious of you in terms of using the digest in terms of what this bill really does. I'd read it just to kind of get yourself quickly what's the subject matter, but not, well, this bill does exactly this. It can be flawed. And also, as soon as they start amending the bill, as the legislature gets really busy, they will go in and will make the technical amendments further in the bill. It says that the people of California Act this. That's the real bill. They'll make these changes, but they won't go back and change the summary. And the summary may reflect 2 versions previously, and it may not reflect what's in the bill at that time. So to quickly get a quick gist of the bill, as you open up the bill, you skip the summary, or else you can quickly look at the summary just to get your head in the subject matter, but you skip that, you go all the way to where it says, the people of the state of California do act as follows, and it says section 1. So right there, you're now in the actual bill that's being proposed. And usually, the way the bill is laid out, first chunk, I don't know if this one is, and I haven't looked at it closely, but usually they lay out sometimes a preamble. Why do we really want this bill? It's not going to be the law. It says, agriculture is having some severe problems, pesticides are in our drinking water, therefore the legislature thinks this is a good idea. And it's, it does nothing. So you can skip the preamble, it's just political mumbo jumbo. And then you can quickly skip the definitions. If there's a definition section, this kind of stuff up front. If you want to, just tell you how you quickly get into a bill. So you cruise that, then you get into where it actually starts saying stuff like all civil criminal, like where it actually says some action. The disposal, section 2 or 25189.5, the disposal of any hazardous waste or causing thereof is prohibited. That's saying the law. Here's some kind of law. Okay. When you read that there, you actually see no changes in it other than at the very bottom where it says, in parentheses, it says 2 or 3, the last line of that section. That's page 4, line 26. And it has a couple cross-outs. Now, it looks like all this other stuff is already existing law because it says up at the top on line 10, it says this is amended to read. If it says amended to read, it means they're only making changes, and all the part that's normal print is already existing law. Unless in the previous versions there were changes made. So you want to make sure the previous versions are all changed. But it's an entirely new section if it says this section is added, not amended to read. It's added. And then what the whole section is added to the law. So any questions about Bill? Just kind of give you a feel for that.
What is, at the top of page 3, where very, very top, before the People of the State of California do an act, it says vote 2/3 appropriation, no, fiscal committee, yes.
Okay.
What is that?
That's a good question. I didn't cover that. Right before the actual part that's enacted, is to be enacted, it will say this on every bill. It'll say vote 2/3 appropriations, no, fiscal committee, yes, what. A bill can either require a majority vote, 1 plus 50%, or it can require a 2/3 vote. If a bill has any kind of appropriation in it, it automatically requires a 2/3 vote. It's very important because in this you have about half Democrats, about half Republicans, and people go along party lines. There's no way in heck you're going to get 2/3 vote. So you're going to take the money out of the bill and send the bill through with a program and try and get the money in the budget process. A separate process usually. That's how a lot of people do it. But, so that's very important. You want to make sure, you know, if you can all get the bill passed without requiring 2/3 vote, that's what you'll do. It's a whole other ballgame. It's like trying to get a veto of the governor. You need 2/3 vote in both houses. The next thing I'll say, if, you know, is it appropriation or not? This one says no. So the other reason you have a 2/3 vote is if it's a state mandated local program. So if it's an appropriation involved or a state mandated local program, it will require a 2/3 vote. So here it says appropriation no, fiscal committee yes, because it's a state, you know, it still involves money in some way, although it's not appropriated here. And it says it's a local mandated program yes. So that's kind of, you can look there.
So it's saying under appropriations, there would, a 2/3 vote is not required, and a fiscal committee, 2/3 vote.
No. I'm sorry, that's not very clear. The vote here only has to do with the floor. All the committee votes, regardless of what's in the bill, is the majority. The only time you talk about a 2/3 of vote, this is when it reaches the floor and all legislators vote on it. That's the kind of vote you have to get. What it's here saying is saying, I'll read it to you, it says the vote. Okay, on the floor it's going to require a 2/3 vote. Does this bill have an appropriation in it? No. Does this bill have to go to a fiscal committee? In other words, does it have to go this way? And the answer here is yes. These things are all decided by rules committee. And then it says state mandated local program. Yes. Originally it was no. They amended the bill and it became yes. What happens is there's a law, like if the state is implementing a program, and say, for example, it might affect Yolo County's budget tremendously. It might tell counties they have to start a new program. Well, that's a state mandated program, so that forces it to go to a fiscal committee to get thorough consideration before they force this upon counties. So I want to talk a little bit about political realities in terms of like affecting votes. And this relates a lot to the power and stuff that Don talked about this morning. I'm going to actually go around the room here now, and I want to ask you guys to chirp in here a little bit. One thing I want to say is, to the simplest degree, I kind of think of political power as two forms. It's either in money or it's in people. And that's kind of what Don explained, that you either are going to write these people checks directly, or you're going to go mobilize a lot of people to gain political power. So what influences a legislator? Maybe I'll just go around the room here. Go this way. Just give me one thing that you think may influence the legislator.
Money.
Okay. Okay. So we'll say a campaign contribution. What else? Go around. Letters from constituents.
Right.
That's kind of important. Really, you know, it won't do us any good to write some other senator who doesn't represent us. You know, one thing he'll do, if you address it to him, he'll put an envelope and send it to your senator and say, deal with it. I don't care. I don't care what your constituent says. It's not voting for me. And that's generally the standard policy. They won't even deal with it, because they got to deal with all their own constituents. What else?
How about something like in Sacramento Mather Air Force Base, where it's a local issue? Is that?
Yeah, I guess I think more like what actually influences the legislature. You could say a popular issue, maybe, or if it's media or something rather, or maybe a popular kind of any public mood. Popular issue. Very popular. What else?
I was only ever taught money and sex.
You what? You're what?
Pardon?
What'd you say?
I was only ever taught that money and sex influence every decision.
Okay, well, I can use the exception here. Seems like it influenced it this week. Go ahead.
I always think of back scratching.
Back scratching. You said back scratching. A little wild. No, I know what you're saying.
But like I think of these guys on these political committees, you're saying, who the chairmen are so powerful, it must be, well, you know, support me on dumping this issue when something comes up that you want, I'm not going to even
So it's kind of like other legislators, right?
Yeah, other
Other
legislators.
legislators. Steve?
I was gonna say, maybe you already said it, but like, to avoid moving that kind of thing, with big population.
Public image.
Yeah, controversial issues.
You like the public image of the group that's trying to do influence on.
I'll give you, pass this around, I think you have a copy, but I didn't get around to it. But shows a brain legislator says what influences the legislator. And I'll throw out a few others here. It says campaign workers, like, when you got a whole volunteer staff and they're working their tail off for you, they can have an influence on legislators. So if you are trying to influence a campaign platform of a legislator, you might have good contacts with the staff and get the staff pretty well convinced that this is a good idea. And then, of course, they do have some impact because the legislature's got to keep them happy because they're not working for money, they're working for, for volunteering usually, or very little money. Legislative leadership, Willie Brown. Willie Brown calls me and says, I think you ought to vote this way. Generally, they do. If you're a Democrat.
What?
Why? Well, Willie Brown, I can talk about school committee. It's really, in the assembly, it's like the Willie Brown committee. And this committee also appoints who's the chair of every other committee.
So it's kind of like back scratching. Right?
Yeah, it's the back scratching issue. I mean, Willie Brown can, you may be chairing a committee today, but if you say no to him today, you may not be chairing the committee anymore tomorrow. That affects your fundraising, it affects your power, it affects whether you get bills passed, etc. So Willie Brown actually has that, and he's done it. In fact, last year, CalPERS was working on a bill. This year, I guess it was a couple months ago, and they came to committee and they didn't have enough votes. Actually, Willie Brown was on the opposite side of CalPERS, and the votes were wrong. So he called and told them to adjourn the meeting, and then between that meeting and the next committee hearing, he pulled someone off the committee and added somebody else on to the votes. But it just in like 2 weeks. I mean, that's incredible, right? He just reshaped the committee real quick so the votes would go the way he liked it. Another thing is like what you just said, public mood. That's here. Public mood, political label. We call it communist. And that's the thing how powerful that is. And they call it Democrats are wimps and comics because they're afraid they're tough on Central America. They're going to be communists. Despite the fact that 70% of the public is saying we shouldn't be doing what we're doing now. Constituent phone calls. This is like the actions. Upcoming election. And that's big. In a non-election year, the attitude and legislators act differently than an election year. They think in a non-election year, the public's going to forget. So it's only those things are like 9 months before the election that they really start worrying about their image. The spouse. If you where's that person at? You get contacts with the spouse of the legislator. Friends and campaign contributors. Just pass that around. Another political reality before we get into the lobbying stuff is that I like to say the facts are not enough. I have to say this has happened very recently with me and working with farmers and other folks that we like, it's our style, grassroots, to get just the people who are affected to actually get involved in the process. And one part of training those people are actually coaching them before you send them down to the Capitol, because it actually can be a really bad experience. It's just, somebody's first trip down to the Capitol, they go to the committee hearing, they're going to come back totally disillusioned unless you prepare them. I mean, a good chance they come back disillusioned. They may have driven down from Chico to go to a hearing, and in fact they get there and none of the senators come to the hearing. Maybe they walk in, there's one senator running the hearing, and all the rest have walked out. And they're in other hearing rooms, and the whole time, at no one time is there more than like one senator or two senators in the room. This guy drove all the way down here to testify, and that's what happened. Then he gets up and he may sit there and give, us or anybody, public interest group, to give great testimony. As Ralph said, we could be on the right side morally, ethically, and factually, could blow away the opposition with the facts, and then you lose. The vote doesn't happen. And that happens. I mean, if Dow Chemical and Chevron are walking behind the doors and on the opposite side, and you haven't done your own organizing to counter that, the bottom line, although it's really on our side, we kind of have to have the facts straight. Because then the other side can be loose with facts because they can make up with the money. But our side, we have to have that straight, but at the same time, facts are not enough. And the reason why is you need power. So let's talk about grassroots lobbying. I'm first going to go kind of through an overview, and then I'm going to pick up a couple of specific things like a personal visit, writing a letter campaign. But I want to start here by kind of doing a little bit of an overview. Again here, I'm going to ask you, and from your own experience, maybe you can give me a list of what ways, I've kind of done it here, kind of in terms of what influences legislators. Now, what actions can we take to as a public interest group to actually influence? What might we do? We'll start over here with Steve. Go ahead.
Besides writing letters.
Well, I would say it's besides. Or I would say writing letters.
Well, the question I had is what you said before about, right, they only respond, they're from like, down south or something.
Right.
So why would they listen?
Well, the point is that, I mean, you should, ideally you say that, and what you hope happens is the people who live in those districts will be really the ones who start writing the letters primarily. In other words, what you want to do is you identify the two you're targeting, and you focus all your letter writing in their district. In our newsletter, we'll put out, well, who are the two key, these are the two key votes. We'll let everybody know that. Because it might be in your district, you know somebody who's with March of Dimes at the chapter level, and then you ask him, well, can you ask the state level to write a letter that's going to this guy, tell him this is important. So if it comes from a statewide organization, that's fine. It can come from anywhere in the state. So there's, we're pointing out who's the key thing. But no, you're right, absolutely. That the letters, particularly personal individual letters, they only have impact if they're coming really from a constituent. I would clarify that. Actually, I should clarify that. That affects when you're writing an individual legislator, like you're writing that legislator. If you're actually writing a committee, they know that there's not a legislator from every district, so they're going to expect mail from statewide. For example, take the Mountain Line. When I went to natural resources, here's a good example. I mean, sometimes like 8 letters is considered a lot on an issue. The Mountain Line had like 6,000 against hunting and like 3,000 for it. Okay, I mean that many letters. And those obviously didn't come from anyone's district. Those came from the whole state. That has an impact. I mean, the committee accumulates those, and in good committees, they will tally them, and they'll list them on the bottom of the analysis. How many, we got 6,000 against hunting and 3,000 for, or whatever. So, when you're writing a committee, anybody can write, but we also point out who the key people are on that committee at the same time. And when you write a committee, if you just want to write the committee, you write the chairperson of the committee. The Senator Presley's chair, he's from Riverside, but we would write him because he's chair of the committee. He expects mail from everybody. What else?
Staging events.
Events. That's good. Might be in somebody's district. It might be where like state capitol. If you could do it. That's a good idea. But part of it, it's about events. I don't want to talk about this too much, but where you stage the event, if like you be able to influence the legislature, you want to try and figure out how that's going to have the biggest impact. What else? What do you think? Yeah.
A lot of people seem to get arrested. I don't know if that's connected to events. Within Jackson.
So, direct action. You're talking about kind of like direct action and nonviolent protest.
What about like enlisting the help of like celebrities or even people that are like officials or experts on subjects, and they go testify at a hearing? That it seems like that would catch their
That's great.
attention.
I'm listing, you can say both technical, allies, just say allies, who are influential. And it might could be somebody with a lot of money, could be possibly a movie star because it's just going to attract attention if they care about the issue. It could be an expert, quote expert. I think, like, for example, Jane Fonda, they came up recently, a whole bunch of movie stars, just about a month ago to the Capitol, they did this big blitz, kind of a follow-up on 65, like we're watching you Duke, and I think at some level that kind of backfires. Because everybody's either just a bunch of movie stars and they're up there, and I think some people, I think in the Sacramento community, I'm not sure, but I got this feedback from like the woman who's head of the Cancer Society, lobbyist, and she said, I think people don't lend that any credibility and they kind of laugh at it. In other cases, I think it does. But I think in the Sacramento community, they're not impressed, and or in the legislature, I don't know. You have to think them through, what kind of impact it's going to have, that kind of thing. What else? Anything else?
How about visiting?
Visiting.
Yeah.
Personal visit.
Or telephone calls.
Phone calls. These are all good. I'm going to just kind of rifle through a handful of others. You can do petitions, you can do letters, phone calls, telegrams. You can get a delegation of people from this person's and go to their district office. A lot of times you can get a lot more attention if you have time, like the bill's not coming up tomorrow, but you get a lot more attention. And it also, legislators like real sure it's in my district that this concern is like, rather than meeting with the Capitol, because this guy thinks, well, he doesn't immediately feel it coming from his district, but it's, on Fridays, legislators are in their districts. So you make an appointment, you get 3 or 4, like if you're homeowners and toxics affecting your neighborhood or farmers or whatever, you get a group of them, small group. You don't want to overwhelm them either, like 5 people if you really want to go talk to them. You go in their district office and make an appointment and go meet the legislator straight on. You actually probably have a lot better chance of actually talking to the legislator to try and arrange it in the district office. So drafting legislative memos, obtaining letters of support from key organizations. Now this has to relate to like coalition building. Obtaining letters of support from key individuals, opinion leaders, other legislators, politicians, columnists, commentators. Demonstrations, as you've already said. Getting media coverage of events. Letters to the editor, news articles in community papers, interviews with legislators, supporting some other issues to gain maybe additional support from other groups that, it's kind of like scratching your backs among public interest groups. Canvassing in someone's district, tabling to generate petitions and letters, public speaking, and forming coalitions.
If you're going to write a letter to the editor to influence a legislator, how would you write that letter? Is it kind of an open letter to the public of Davis saying, so-and-so who represents this district of our area is acting this way on this issue? Is that kind of an approach, or is it?
Right. I wouldn't really attack the legislator in the first go-around. I would write a letter that says, Senate bill such and such by Senator so-and-so, who happens to represent this district, these areas, is currently pushing a bill that will do the following. And then lay out in that following, the really disturbing elements of it that you think are really bad. And then it would say, personally, having worked with this legislator, this is hypothetical, over the years he's done these kinds of things that really shocked us. In fact, he maybe shocked us that he would even consider working on something like this. We so-and-so, the undersigned, maybe 2 people or something, call on Senator so-and-so to change this policy. We ask you, the public, to write letters and encourage him to vote this way. So the letter would be something you want to spark the public to start making contacts with this person so he starts feeling a little pressure. And I wouldn't say that, I would just lay out clearly who the bill belongs to, and then I would attack the bill, not the legislator. And then people will get the message, but I would it's kind of like Ralph said, still need to attack the legislature, attack the bill, and people relate to it. What kinds of things, through a bunch of things here. What kinds of things do you need to do this? Now, if you have an organization or if you're just a group of people or whatever, things you're going to need a list of legislators and their addresses. You're going to want their committee assignments. Who's the chair people of all the committees? And actually, what's the composition of all the committees? And this is a big deal. You can actually go get one little pamphlet that usually lists all these. Another thing you can get, which is free, if you're in the Capitol, you can write and they'll send it to you, is just get a daily file, like an assembly file. In each house they have a file that tells what's going on. And in that file, it lists all the committee assignments. And that's free. It's just a thing. You can always purchase what are called legislative guides. And some organizations like Common Cause and others publish legislative guides. You're going to want district maps. If you're working in a particular district, you want to get the district maps. You want to know the boundaries. You want to, if you're going to do a canvas particularly, you're going to target a district, you want to make sure you're in the district. District maps are good also because you'll look at a committee composition, be 9 legislators on there, and you want to find out where are these people from. So you got to figure out where the guy's district, how can we got to target his district, well, where is it? Those are also available. In each house they have a committee, it's called elections and something committees in the Assembly and the Senate. And each of them have legislative maps of all the assembly members or all the senators. And so you can request those. Also in the California, there's a guide put out by the California Journal. In there they'll have little mini maps and they'll show you the districts. You need a handout about the bill process so the people you're working with can get a feel for that. It's kind of good sometimes to have profiles of legislators. A lot of people, a lot of things our organization hasn't even done very well, but we really just rely on friends to figure out, well, who's who, where's this guy coming from? We happen to know that Senator Nielsen used to work and still does for the chemical industry. He receives $10,000 a year from a chemical company. So you can be sure if you go in there with a bill that it's kind of promoting alternatives to chemicals, he's not going to like it. So you can develop these, and you can actually put them on paper and post them, and you have them in your office a file on legislators, particularly the ones you run into a lot, committees like the Ag Committee. One thing you want to generate anytime you're doing a particular issue is generate a sample letter. People will write letters, you want it on file. Also, you may mail it out in your newsletter, do special mailings, targeted mailings. A sample letter from this guy's district, we're going to send to all the people we know in that district. And just, I always say a sample letter, please write your own letter, but something like the following. You might have a sample letter on one side, you turn it over and it's background, so they can read about really what this is all about. Background material on the issue, okay, I kind of mentioned that. It's really helpful. It's one of the things you ought to consider to do early on if you're working on an issue, is develop a background piece. And it should be no more than 2 pages. A more concentrated version of that is what we call a fact sheet. Now, fact sheet should be no more than 1 page. And if you go lobby a legislator, personally, I'll get to that, you always want a fact sheet. This guy's running around, he's getting stuff from everybody, and by the time he gets down to the hearing to vote on what you're talking about, he's going to forget what you told him. So he has this in his pocket, or puts in that file. He'll pull it out and say, oh yeah, agrarian action, they said this is the problem with this, and then ask me questions. So generate a fact sheet. It says the fact sheet format is 1, what's the problem? 2, what does this bill do, and how does it solve that problem? And then 3 would be, what are some of the critical arguments for and against? In other words, well, this is what we're saying, if they're saying this, we rebut with this. And then 4 might be previous votes, like, well, particularly if you have a unanimous vote in a policy committee and then against the fiscal committee, you want a policy committee to know that it was unanimous. You want to make sure they see that. So you'll say, 11 to 0. And so you might have that. And then you can also use that with people, public, but particularly you always give it to a legislator. Another thing you want to do is you want to begin, and this comes in later, you brainstorm about who your allies are, if you're going to start talking about forming coalitions. And then you might, at some point in a big campaign, begin to develop materials for training to do the functions as we described above, all these functions above. There's little, there's skills involved in all these. I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to go into writing an effective letter. Just going to kind of walk through a few things. is, you know, a lot of people go, well, I don't know what to say. Best thing a letter can say is just what you know and your own personal experience. In fact, it's a better letter than a form letter anybody gives you or anything. Best thing you can say is, I'm a farmer, I'm making, you know, I'm just, don't normally write letters. I'm writing you today because this really bugs me. And I understand this is happening, and you know, and just speak from your own experience the best letter. And one thing you want to do immediately up in front, first sentence of the letter is identify the bill number, the current status, like you say, SP such and such. Please oppose this bill. It's up in the Senate Natural Resources in 1 week. You know, so let them know where it is in the process. Next thing you'll do is you'll ask the legislator to put himself on record in support of it, you know, or against it, whatever you want him to do. You ask him specifically. You will ask him, for example, Senator, will you please write a letter to this committee? In other words, he may not be on the committee. Or will you please write a letter to all the other members of that committee? The guy, you know, and please let me know when you've done this. And then the last thing you do is you ask the legislator, please write me and tell me your position. It's very specific. You want an answer on this guy. What's his position? A letter should be ideally typed in 1 page, you know, brief, and it should only talk about one issue at a time. In other words, you should never say, Senator, please vote for Bill 501, 506, and 230. The reason why, the way the system works, is they get the thing in and they got to find out which file do I put it in. And people aren't going to walk down the hallway to Xerox it 3 times and drop it 3 files. So it's going to end up in one of those files and get counted once. And I know, staff knows things happen. I should say, some of you may not know, I worked in the legislature for 2.5 years. So, you know, one issue, one position, give your, you know, where you're coming from yourself and why you want that position with some kind of just general reason. Use personal stationery. It's better than a postcard. It's better than a form letter. Type it if you can. If you write, writing's okay, just as long as it's clearly legible. It's nothing frustrating. I mean, staff's dealing with a lot of letters. If they can't read it, they're just going to chuck it. Keep the letter short. When I said about the background, you do demonstrate your familiarity with the issue a little bit. It's actually more effective not to mention your affiliation with the organization. In other words, if you say, well, I'm with the California Green Action Project and I'm writing this letter and this bugs me, they see, well, this organization organizes people to write letters. The more scary letters and the ones that they think, well, this letter actually represents 2,000 people's opinion. If it just seems like a spontaneous letter, if somebody sat down and wrote a letter, nobody came to him and asked him to write that letter. It was a spontaneous letter. So it's better just write the letter. It can be a captain or whatever, or not a captain. If you know the legislator's recent position on the bill, like he's already taken some kind of action, do mention it. You know, like say, I liked your previous vote. I hated your previous vote. You know, let him know that he's already on record. You know, if you can, if you know that. In general, you don't want to threaten them. You don't want to call names. You're really going to have zero impact. They will deep six it, and you might as well not waste your time. You know? I mean, they might they'll send you a real BS response. Thanks for writing. You know, but the same thing when you meet him in person. I mean, if you go in there and rant and rave, you know, about that kind of impact. You know, it's one thing to go in there and show your emotion and really uptight, really disturbs you, but just to start yelling at the legislator, the guy you don't want to deal with it, you know. And just remember, any letter is better than no letter. So I mean, whatever you come up with.
So does it help at all if you wanted to take 1 minute and just say, please support or please oppose this bill? That's it.
That's it. That's fine. That's better than no letter. I mean, if you think you can get, like that's like, you kind of weigh that. Like if you're going to do letter writing at your table, you know, people are walking along going grocery shopping. You're weighing getting to make it seem like a real natural letter versus short enough to where they'll actually stay there and write it, and you also you can generate more. So a letter that just says, please support Birth Defect Prevention Act. It's for all humanity, so-and-so. That is a known letter. It counts, one letter. You know, and like, in some communities, you know, when you get 8 or 10 letters, you know, the number is not quite critical. But sometimes when you get these big things like the mountain lion thing, you know, they don't have time to read all of them, they're just counting. You know, so 6,000 letters is 6,000 letters, it doesn't really matter what's in them, like starts getting on the bigger issues. But usually you're talking about, you shouldn't think like that though, usually you're talking about, they're getting about 5, 6, 7 letters. So it's really amazing. They don't get many letters. Most, even big bills, you know, Birth Defect Prevention Act, handful of letters or so.
If you're doing a letter writing campaign, say like if you're going to sit at a supermarket or something, I just know from at the Whole Earth Festival, people didn't know where their districts were and stuff, and I know, you know, county, I don't know. You know, do you have to? It's a good idea to have like a map, you know, so people can say, oh, well, I live here, this is who I write to. I think.
Right. It's good to have. If you're doing tabling, it's ideal to have a guide there with you of the legislators, and they go, well, yeah, I'm from Cape Bay Valley. You know, who do I write to? You should know. You say, well, your legislator is still Senator Jim Nielsen. So you write him a letter. You know, yeah, if you want to know, you know, who to write to, and you actually should assume most people don't know who their legislators are. They don't. So you really want that information. And like on sample letters, if you're targeting a district, you want to put on there, bottom letter, mail this letter to, and have the address. You know, you want to make it as easy as possible. So I'm going to talk a minute here about kind of how to actually make a personal visit. There's a couple kinds of visits. I like one called like tracking down a legislator, and the other one is actually making an appointment. The one kind is, like I said, in a district. You know, the guy has, if you on Friday, that's really what he does on Fridays. He meets with people in his district. So you can make that appointment 2 weeks at a time. You actually keep the date. You go in and talk to him, and you actually say, we want half an hour with him. So you may have 5 people. I'm not going to go into probably details maybe at the end of this exhibit. You know, it's just you go in and tell them your position. You want a fact sheet with you, something you're going to leave with them, and you tell them how you try and give them the impression that a lot of people are concerned about this in the community, that kind of thing. The kind of contact I want to talk about is just like if you're working on that's important, very important. This one's probably actually less important, but I want to mention it because we are close to Sacramento around here. If you want to go down to Sacramento and talk to a legislator, it might be that you have out-of-town visitors here, you know, some important, you know, people from our other chapter who want to actually go talk to the legislator because they're only here today and they want 5 hours drive. Generally, if you just go down there and walk in, the odds of finding a legislator available are very slim. The legislator is walking around the Capitol going to hearing rooms, either doing one of 2 things, presenting his own bill before a committee, or sitting on a committee and listening to other bills. And generally, they should be in like 3 committee rooms at the same time. So you realize they're doing this all the time. And in between in their office, and lobbyists are lined up at the door, a couple sometimes, to get in and see them for 5 minutes. And generally, probably average lobbyist contact the legislator is probably less than 5 minutes. So if you don't get much time, or you'll be disappointed. I'll just give you my one method, which works as good as any to actually get to see the legislator in person. And that is, you go in the office and you ask them, I'd like to see Senator so-and-so, or whoever it is. And you act as though, of course I'll be able to see him. You say, I'd like to see Senator so-and-so, is he in? And they'll say, well, no, he's in committee, or he's on the floor. He may actually be there, and they'll still say, well, he's busy, he's got something in his office, or he's got to go to a committee hearing, he's leaving in just a minute. You ask him, well, where does he have to go next? He's going to the floor in a minute, or he's going to this committee hearing in 20 minutes. You say, can I walk with him? It's very difficult, in fact, they don't normally do it, for staff to say, no, you can't walk with him. You're willing to just follow him down the hallway, and this is what lobbyists do. So you say, if he's in his office and he's about to buzz out of there, and he's got 3 people in there, so you sit in the little chair in the hallway, or in this little waiting area, and when he gets ready, you have your stuff all ready, you have your fact sheet in hand, and then he comes out the door, and then you get up and go, oh, hi, Senator so-and-so, and if you told the secretary you're going to walk with him, she'll say, Senator so this is whoever they'd like to walk with you down the hearing. And so you actually just follow him down the hallway, and you get in the legislator's elevator with him, and he cruise down the legislator's elevator. So you got about 2-3 minutes to talk to this guy. And you go, I'm with the California Grant Action Project, or I'm a farmer representing so-and-so, and this bill's up in committee today. It's a really important issue. We're really hurting economically, or whatever the reason. And you just lay this rap on real quick and just say, please vote for it. Myself and 5 other friends from the district will be there, and we're looking forward to you helping out. And let them know you're going to be there watching. So you go, that's how you make that contact. That's how lobbyists do it. Except they go and say, oh, hi, Nick, how are you doing? Get in the elevator with you, and Dow Chemical. This is just really a shitty bill. These flaming liberals, and they'll get the message, So that's how they do it. But, so a lobbyist is nothing other, it's really, they'll be, lobbyist is kind of a funny word, but really all lobbyists is something we all do. It's try and persuade somebody to do what you want them to do, vote a certain way. Just going in there and just trying to persuade them to take a position. And the word lobbyist came from lobbyists. They do what I just described. They sit in the hallway and follow legislators down the hall. And actually, where I would say 3/4 of lobbyist contacts actually happen in the hallway. If you look at the floor in the Capitol, there'll be right where the door is to the legislators' entrance to the assembly floor. They have a bench there for all the lobbyists. And they have a microphone so they can sit there because they can't see what's going on. So they can hear what's going on in the floor debate. So they sit out there in the hallway, and then they have a sergeant at arms, and the vote's coming up, and so they'll hand their business cards to somebody and say, please give this to Senator so-and-so, ask him to come out and talk to him. And so the senator will walk up to this little gate, and he'll stand there, and the lobbyist put his arm over him, and the senator, and then he walks back and votes. So that's how that happens. So so you go down there, you see this mob of people don't feel totally comfortable to go up there and do the same thing, You may not have a business card, you might just write a note saying, I'm so-and-so from your district, I'm representing this group of people, please come out to the hallway and talk to me for just a minute.
So you're always really polite. You never make any innuendos, threats about reprisals or blah, blah, blah.
No, you're wasting your time. I mean, if you want to do that for kicks, fine. You want to actually influence the guy's vote? No. Not unless you can, not unless you're the mafia or Dow Chemical. I mean, people don't, in legislature, these guys are voting on 1 million bills every day. They personally don't get that personally attached to these things. They've seen raving constituents before. And, you can be emotional. I'm saying is that in a certain way, you may play a trick on the guy and make him feel guilty. But I wouldn't assault him, verbally. Unless the vote's already happened and you're giving him feedback. Ann Suter, for example, was a nurse who's now in Nicaragua. She worked at the CAP on farmer groceries. We had this hearing, and these great facts on our side. The chemical industry lobbyist was there. Actually, she attacked the lobbyist. And he was saying all this shit, bullshit, and yet they got the committee to vote the chemicals away. We're walking out the hallway, and I couldn't do it because I'm directing the organization. But she is a member of just public. They can do this. Lobbyists can't do this. They lose their job tomorrow. But the public can. That's why it's so important to bring real people down there. And Suter, how can you go to sleep at night? You lobby to kill babies every week. It's kind of like saying, all the public and the reporters start coming around. Who's this woman screaming at this guy? It's like, this is great, because it's rarely ever that exciting down there. But that can have an impact, particularly with legislators sitting there, and it's like, how are you legislators just listen to the chemical industry? The cameras are walking out, they got them on their shoulders, what's going on. So you can actually affect things that way, but you can't do it if, as a director of an organization or something, or if you're officially representing an organization. But if it's somebody, a farmer we recruit to go down there, they're the public. They're shocked to see what's happening. So just in terms of lobbying, do your homework. I'm going to give you 8 little comments. Do your homework. In other words, know the facts. Be honest and accurate. This is all part of doing your homework. And if you don't know an answer, don't lie. Or don't even fudge it. Just say to the guy, "Bill, I ask you a tough question, I'd like to vote for it, but I heard this," and you go, "Well, I don't really know." Say, "I will get back to you, find the right answer and get back to him." But this is part of credibility, that if you fudge it and then later on find this half-truth, well, your credibility is really gone. Plan your opener. In other other words, when you started talking to somebody, plan, how are you going to get this conversation going? In other words, organize a little bit, how you actually say, say what it is you're going to say and get it started. In other words, something that's friendly. You actually, see, you don't want to just say, Senator, for this bill. It's nice to actually break the ice with a senator or a legislator. Just, say something about something. Like, oh, I saw you in our district about this. Appreciate you helping the park. Listen as well as talk. In other words, particularly from our angle, we're going into the office is not really going to, that's coupled with other efforts it's going to have to impact. But going into the office and talking to this guy, you're not going to change his vote if 25 industrial companies walk in there and do the opposite. And they got lobbyists down there full time. So listen. I mean, you can get a lot of information out of this guy. He can start, he knows what's going on. So you like to think so. But he's going to tell you like why you can't vote or what's holding this up. You want to, you also listen, give him a chance to give you some information. Because you can take that back to the rest of your campaign, your letter writing campaign. You can change the letter. Maybe he said something that there's this problem. You get all these letters to be written on a different angle. Ask good questions. Don't argue. Look for an opening to come back with more information. In other words, if something's incomplete, he says, well, I'd like to, but you say, well, that's great. We've been looking into this. We'll bring you some more information. In other words, if you want to, you can indeed come out of that meeting with a reason for him to have to meet with you again, so you get additional contact with the legislature. Know your opposition. Again, it's like with media. This guy's going to go, well, who opposes it? And he may already know. Maybe they've already arrived at his doorstep and been telling him. But you might go in there, it might be not a big issue. If there's no opposition, he's probably not, and if you're the only people he's heard from, he's going to probably vote your way. People don't vote if they haven't heard from anybody. So, but in the other way, there might be a lot of opposition. And if you're being fair to legislators, he's going to appreciate it like the media will if you say, well, just half of the industrialized world hates your bill. We like it or the opposite. So you just tell them that. This is really controversial. You may not know it. The last thing is, like I kind of said before, is to be persistent. In other words, keep going at it. I'm going to kind of get, this is kind of just a scenario which kind of relates, you can do this with a letter writing campaign, you can do this with a letter writing campaign combined with some other things. And I'll go through here. It's kind of like, it's planning a strategy to affect, say, a letter writing campaign to affect legislation. With some of the planning I put together. Let's just say we want this one legislator to vote a certain way, or two legislators. So kind of a good format is to set it up as, you have your goal, you have your task, and then you have your skills required. And this kind of relates to this training. So let's say a lot of times the phone is important because bills move through the Capitol a lot. They bounce back and forth, and generally you only get a couple days notice. So letter writing campaign is good if we say, okay, the next 2 years we're introducing this bill now, we're pushing this bill for 2 years. Letter writing campaign is great. It might be you're actually responding to a bad bill. All of a sudden you heard yesterday this bill got introduced, and you don't have time to organize, although you may because it's going to be a long fight, but you want to stop it next week in committee. So a phone calling thing might happen. Now, we've done this, the CAP has done this very effectively, and I would say particularly, well, we've done it a lot, but recently our other chapters in Fresno and Bakersfield. I think like Joyce Johnson in Bakersfield generated like 100 phone calls in about 2 days with Senator Madden. And these were just Joe phone calls. She got like the mayor and folks that call. She got some important people to call also. And Maddie told us how many calls he got. He said, call off the docs, don't forget. So this is about a year ago. One is, let's say it's a phone bank. Say you want to actually just generate a lot of phone calls. So what's the goal? The goal is you have to set up like a phone tree. What are the tasks? Tasks, you collect names. measure. So, and then other tasks might be, calling people, just a lot of calling to get people to call. Another task would be putting together the fact sheet and getting a cover letter out to all these other folks so they know what they're talking about. They're on the phone tree. So you're sending a packet to the phone tree. And then what you're going to get to is you can say, well, these tasks actually require some skills. What do they require? Well, the phone rap, you just call somebody else and say, make a phone call. Anything you do in this business, whether it's organizing a meeting like this one right here, and Mark will tell you all about it, paying attention to details are important. If you're just going to tell people, you call these people, it's going to have a certain impact. If you give this guy a packet, it's got a designed phone rap, which is put together by somebody who knows how to do a phone rap. In other words, it's, why should I really take time to call? Why is it so immediate? You can have, even if they're members of your organization, they're busy. And so why should I stop tonight and make 5 phone calls? So you want a phone rap. So in other words, so a skill would be somebody to put together a rap. And it's got certain elements, it's got a reason, it's immediacy, it's basically, you're selling these people why to make this phone call, and the rap, also explains that. Writing a cover letter, you need that sample, maybe this is a sample letter, or it might be further explaining why we're doing this whole thing, and so you're going to have maybe a 50% response of people writing letters rather than maybe 20%. And collecting names, that's, somebody's got to know, well, where do I get names? That might just be going through your own membership list. Another thing might be, which I'll add here, is it's kind of related to volunteer management, is motivation. I mean, how it relates to the rap and this kind of thing. Skills is important because it affects that, but you might sit around and brainstorm, like, what's going to motivate our members to actually write this letter? It might be in that brainstorm you say, well, maybe we actually can create an opportunity for people to write letters, where it's simple. I'll give you a good example, Friends of the River. I mean, they got this system wired. They take you on a boat ride all summer. Everybody who goes on a boat ride for Friends of the River, they do trips all summer long, like they got 8 boats out every weekend, every day, every weekend, or all week long in summer. At lunch, you stop, you have lunch. Before you get back in the boat, you have to write a letter. You don't have to, but it's pretty clear. And then they'll have a sample letter there. They pull out this little Army, waterproof kit. And they got the pencils, the paper, the envelopes, the stamps, and everybody sits around under a tree. And you got this, captured audience, and they write letters. They generate hundreds of letters on these raft trips. I mean, there's hundreds of people who go down these rivers every year. So you might do your brainstorm to sort of motivating or getting people, making sure they actually do the job. In terms of a letter writing campaign, again, the planning would be a similar kind of thing. And a goal would be, we want 1,000 letters. Okay, and how do you know that? You want a method where you actually verify the letters. And you say, well, we asked 1,000 people to write letters, but you have no idea. So it means that actually you personally, you have people out there getting letters written, and you post them for them. The planning is the same. What are the tasks? The tasks are, and I know that going on over there, but it means, okay, well, we got to do tabling. We're going to have to set up some tables at varying locations. And we're going to have to, and that's going to require what skills? It requires tabling skills. Tabling, you don't sit behind the table, you stand in front of it. A lot of people don't know that. And it might be part of the training of the skills is, this person here has to set a goal. How many letters per hour can I get? And there is a basic amount. People should be able to get 20 letters per hour. Actually, I think it's like 20 signatures per hour, like 8 letters. I mean, 20 signatures, maybe 8 or 10 letters per hour or something like that. So, but if you don't set those goals and you actually train people actually how you get people to come stop and write a letter. So there's this goal, the task, and the skills again for the letter writing campaign. And just to give you some of the general rule of thumb is that letters have 5 times the impact of a card. They have 50 times the impact of a form letter, and about 500 times the impact of a petition signature. In other words, the more personal the media, the bigger impact it's going to have. And really the personal letters. So actually though, there's different strategies. Sometimes just from an organizing point of view, you want to contact a lot more people, so a petition might be the way to go. In other words, from our point of view, the real reason we're doing all this is to organize the power. You know, we're also creating additional power for ourselves. We're making contacts with people. At the same time, we're flexing power by forcing this stuff into the Capitol. But if you actually get people to write letters, you're going to get many fewer letters than say people who will sign something. Well, it's kind of an assessment of needs to carry out the goals. And the task would be, well, like this part, you calculate, well, how many, if we want 1,000 letters written our goal, how many hours is it going to take for individuals to collect 1,000 letters? You say, okay, we get 8 letters per hour per person out there collecting. This, I don't know the actual numbers are reasonable. But if you figure it out, and you say, okay, we're going to need 200 hours out there with individuals collecting letters. You say, okay, we've got 2 weeks. We're going to actually table 3 days, or we're going to do this in a 3-day period. Well, how many individuals do we need? It's just hypothetical. Well, it turns out we need 20 individuals to do that. If you're planning way ahead long enough, it might be, well, we only got 6 people on this committee, this group that are working on this. That means we're going to have to go recruit some more people. And this is a really good type of thing to recruit on because it's very tangible. We need, here's the issue, we need you to help write letters. You recruit people to go out and help write letters. And of course, when you recruit people, you recruit that 20 people, that's the task. That's the task in itself, kind of setting up for this stuff. 20 people, then you have to train them because getting the letters written is a skill again. Don't assume people know how to table. Don't assume people know how to get somebody else to write a letter. They don't. It's a real skill. It's a personal skill. So again, and that involves, again, you're going to have to do like training. And this might be one-on-one. It might be you might have to come in and, okay, we're going to go to table day. We're going to meet here at 3 o'clock. We're going to have a 1-hour session on how to do this. And then we're going to go do it. I'll give you an example. Last fall in Prop 65, we were working on voter registration. I went over, and I think Glenda and a bunch of people from Kaplan went over to campus and table to get people registered to vote. We were sitting right next to the ASGCD table. They had their table out there. I don't know if we were right next to them or not, but we were not too far away. They were doing it too. These people, although they're real active in the ASGCD, they were just sitting quietly behind that table. They might have registered one voter for half a morning. People are cruising by, they see it, but they're not thinking about it. And they're sitting by the table, and we were meanwhile registering 10 times as many people. 10 to 1 or 8 to 1 or something. Because the people, when we were registering, we had 2 people out in front of the table, standing, it was right between the library, the bookstore and the coffee house. And we were standing there, and they have 2 people just floating in the crowd. And we had these things like, you register to vote, or it was a toxics initiative. It's like, are you aware of the toxics initiative? You need a hook. You just throw it out there, and something to catch your attention, and you actually, the toxics initiative, what's that? Yeah, it's on the ballot. Are you registered to vote? And then they say no. So well, you need to register. And just by being out there, you're not going to hassle these people, but you're just going to put it right in their face, and you're going to, let them know that, well, if you don't register in 3 days, you can't vote. So it's the same kind of process and skills. Any questions about all this? Does this make sense in terms of, it really requires planning. It's not like, well, we're going to do a letter writing campaign. It requires, okay, let's have a meeting and plan a letter writing campaign. The last big thing I'll talk about is coalition building. I can go back over the things. coalition building is really one of the most effective things you can do as a public interest group. It's like we're networked with a lot of groups. As an individual, Davis located nonprofit. Let's take Humboldt Herbicide Task Force up in Humboldt, or CCAP, group on pesticides. They're against people spraying the apple maggot program, spraying up there. Well, they organize their whole district. They're only influencing one legislator. You know, they only, I mean, they can organize every voter in that district, and yet because the jurisdiction over pesticides at the state level, they're only going to influence one vote, or two votes, or senator and one legislator. So in that situation, you can see without coalition, without working with other groups, without working with our organization here, or Sierra Club, who's got chapters all over the state, or farm organization, or whoever, medical association, their support is minimal. Now we're a little better shape. We have a chapter here, President Bakersfield and Salinas, but that's still not, that's 4 votes. So you almost always, in addition to just getting general letters to the general public and your membership and that kind of thing, reaching out to individuals or communities, you need to form coalitions to broaden it so you can really have a cross-the-board impact on the capital. And I'm going to use Senate Bill 950, the Birth Defect Prevention Act 1984. This bill, just to quickly say, it was a bill that stepped up the process by requiring the 10 chronic health effects studies at the Department of Food and Ag. There was these huge data gaps. The bill basically said fill the gaps on pesticides. And so the entire agrochemical industry opposed the measure, Manufacturers Association, all the mainstream farm groups opposed the measure. Eventually, though, we were able to split them off from the chemical industry, and that was part of the reason we had the victory of this. Who did we start with? When I came on as Senator Petrus' staff, this bill, it was the second year of a 2-year session. This bill had already been to one hearing and was stalled. And I remember Ralph, who was here earlier, Senator Petrus' chief of staff gave me 10 bills. I came in, well, nobody else on the staff knows anything about pesticides. You're going to work on this. I talked to Ralph, I called him up, and I know this guy really that well, I knew him a little bit, but I said, Ralph, hearing's coming up in a couple of weeks, are you ready? He goes, yeah, Dan, I think I've been thinking about it. Maybe we should just drop it. I don't think we're going to get the votes. And of course, I was new, and why not just go for it? So at that point, we had like 3 or 4 organizations in support of it. And so we started to build this coalition. In addition to working with all the little groups we could find, we started to, first of all, identify who can support this. I mean, it's a Birth Defect Prevention Act. Actually, did it with cancer and all these other things. So health organizations ought to support it. Like the Health Officers Association, the Cancer Society, March of Dimes, which is the birth defects. They work on birth defects. Those are actually some of the more powerful ones, the real mainstream health organizations, health advocacy groups. So we went after them. We got them. March of Dimes came on. We went, wow, that was a big deal because they have a lot of credibility. I'll give you an example though. Like sometimes you ask somebody, they don't want to get involved. How do you want to get kind of across the board? You want to get broad based. It'd be great to bring on a farm organization or whatever. Well, we thought it'd be great to bring on the California Medical Association. But it just turns out the California Medical Association is one of the most conservative organizations in the country. They also are the largest campaign contributor in the state of California. So we got them on our side. We're starting to be on the big boy side and everything. So what we thought about it, we didn't approach them immediately, but who we did approach was the Academy of Pediatrics. Pediatricians tend to be more liberal. They tend to think, this is a health issue. We'll support it. They don't mind opposing the Manufacturers Association or the chemical or the industry. So we had their lobbyists said right on, they came on, so we got pediatricians. So just so happens a lot of pediatricians are also in the Medical Association. So we said, if we asked the pediatricians, would you guys talk with the Medical Association? And so after we got a very strong statement from the pediatricians, we got them on paper, write letters, we got a good solid statement, reasons why. We didn't go straight to the Medical Association. We waited until this other group was firmly into it. And then we asked them, then they went to the Medical Association, and they lobbied for us. The Medical Association policy board, and the Medical Association came on. So after a short time, several months, a few months, we had 55 organizations in support of SB 950. And everything from health officers to Sierra Club to Humboldt Riverside Task Force to Citizens for a Better Environment to labor. Labor is exposed. You know, pesticides are bad, and people actually in the companies that manufacture, not only farm workers, but labor in the companies get exposed to this stuff. Labor that actually uses pesticides in a non-ag sense also. So we got the AFL-CIO to support it. That's a big thing. Okay. We got Federated Firefighters to support it. Firefighters have to go clean this stuff up, and they just soon have, you know, if this stuff is really bad stuff, we don't ever want to go to a spill of it. So let's get it off the market. So Federated Firefighters come along.
Are there times when there are coalitions that you don't want to join? If they're going to hurt you?
When groups, you don't want groups to join you?
Yeah.
Maybe if there's only one or two groups supporting the measure, and then one comes on and dominates. I mean, only in the sense that if you're the only group supporting it, and the other group is somebody who's like somebody you wouldn't expect to support it, it might create more confusion, but generally not. I mean, they always say politics creates odd bedfellows. In other words, that every once in a while, you'd be surprised, we'll end up on the same side of a measure as the chemical companies. Now, actually, on SB 950, it turned out there were some chemical companies that were on our side. The way that works is, toward the end, a couple of big companies, the real biggies, actually saw this bill and started looking at their interests. And the reason for that is that you have the big manufacturers, the one who actually make the product, Dow, Monsanto, DuPont. And then after that, you have a whole bunch of little guys. They take the main technical grade, they formulate it in different combinations, and you have like called, you know, the Chemical Specialty Manufacturers Association that deals with that. They don't have the resources to do all this registration. And this bill is saying you can't register it unless you have these studies done. So big guys would start to think, well, right now there's 20 people out there selling this product. We'd like to dominate the market. If we're the only ones that can afford the studies, then these people are out of business, and we're the only ones that sell the product. So, you know, they came in, you know, at one point, they were changing their tune for a while that, well, maybe we'll get a larger share of the market of this particular, you know, our couple chemicals, and these other little manufacturers will go out of business because they can't afford to do all of, you know, the $2 million in testing. So it's really kind of weird. How you form a coalition, there's different levels. Like right now, on this state elected, the bill we're working on, or actually budget item, we'd like to get coalition support. One way is usually in any coalition, there's 2 or 3 point groups. I mean, they're really the ones that are fighting the issue. The other groups come in just to give a perceived appearance that they're really active in it. And that's really what you're talking about in this business, perceived base, perceived power. Legislators really perceive is your power. And so there usually 2 or 3 groups that are taking all the lead, they're generating all the fact sheets, they're generating all the information, they're cutting the issue, and then you're feeding this out to all this other coalition. And it might be if you have a great legislator working with, he will feed it out to whoever's on his bill. We'll print it. So, like right now, there's a whole bunch of groups that could write and support this measure, like consumer groups, environmental groups, could say, but we also would like to see alternatives to pesticides. So one way to begin to kind of form a coalition on that would be to send them a cover letter, send them an organizational sample letter, and then a 2-page background piece, and then get on the phone and call them and say, oh, PCL, Sierra Club, Fins the River, look here, we just sent you something in the mail, you should get it today. The letters are basically written form, so all I gotta do is send it through whoever types over there. And you type out this letter. And then in particular hearings, you might recruit out of this coalition of 20 groups, 2 or 3 particularly important groups to come testify. And then you might have to kind of lobby them to come testify because they're working on 20 other bills. So, so that's really important. Now, another thing about coalition, it's not coalition building, but it's, when you think about coalitions, you also understand the other side is doing the same thing. So, it's really important to identify the opposition's coalition. And sometimes they form coalitions, sometimes they don't, but you know, it's a big struggle, generally they are. And I'll give SB 950 as a very good example. This was kind of impressive. The Department of Food and Ag director, Claire Berryhill, took it on his role to be coordinator of the coalition against this measure. I mean, a director of the department. That was, I mean, he using the state resources, running upside down the state saying this is a terrible bill. So he's calling the chemical companies, the farm organizations, manufacturers associations, chambers of commerce, calling them together and saying, this is our line. You guys we're all going to be consistent on this. This is our line. Well, at that time, you know, like we're talking about press, I mean, Ralph generated a stack, we generated a stack of an editorial, the Bee, Chronicle, Mercury, LA Times, about this thick. About every month, we got something in the paper. It was incredible. So the ag community was taking a lot of heat. I mean, here they are opposed to the Birth Defect Prevention Act. So, and also, really, this bill, there were some major differences in their position in ag. Really, I mean, fundamentally, they should not be in the same position. They should not be taking all this heat from the chemical companies. The chemical companies should be testing the products. So we saw that our strategy all along was to just work on splitting that coalition and cutting a deal that we could agree with the farmers, Farm Bureau, Ag Council, and we did. And that's what we did. And chemical companies could never agree to that. They could never agree to the bill, period. They just wanted to kill it. So we basically broke them off. We got two of the lead lobbyists, one with the grape tree fruit growers, one with the Farm Bureau, and we negotiated with them separately. And when the other group found out, and it got so dirty that the director of Food and Ag wrote letters to these tree fruit growers and Farm Bureau saying, if you want any more clout around my office, you better shut these lobbyists down. They're negotiating outside my coalition. I mean, this is really outrageous. In fact, they threatened the jobs of these lobbyists. I mean, this is really unnatural. I mean, everybody down there is professional lobbyists. You don't go after the job. I mean, these guys are just doing a job. So it's like, you know, Ralph tells me, it's 3 years later almost, that there's still this huge rift between that 950. When these people's jobs, actually they were called in and said to change their act, they're going to get fired. And it was caused by other people that have normally been allies caused this to happen to them.
They were called in by their employers at Farm Bureau.
They're called in by their Farm Bureau boards and said, lobbyists, listen to Claire Berryhill, he's got this coalition, how come you're outside? But it was too late by then.